Big Moss Pure Flight hitting strip has been one of the most requested reviews for this channel. And after hearing so many great things about it from comments and messages, I was expected to be amazed. However, after spending some time testing both the original and the plus size version, I came away with a little bit of a different opinion. So in this review, I'm going to tell you everything I can about this hitting strip, compare it to some other ones so you can kind of get an idea of how it fits in, and hopefully give you an idea if this is right for you. So let's get started just talking about the actual hitting strip itself. It's pretty simple. It's 2 layers. We've got, starting with the bottom, a foam base. As you can see, it's not rigid, it's floppy. And this foam base looks to be about 1/2 inch thick. I can squeeze it and it squishes a little bit, but it's on the denser side. And in my opinion, this foam base here is kind of not really doing much. It's simply kind of a base so that you can attach the turf on top, and it's better than using something rigid. So if you do head down and into it, you're not hitting concrete or some kind of hard board, right? The real difference and what makes this hitting strip unique is the turf on top. And it does have something going on that I've really never seen before. Often with hitting strips, you'll see a few different types of turf on top. Sometimes it's just putting turf, like 1/2 inch thick, really short, and overall makes a dense, more solid surface. Other types are longer, but still curly and dense. The last type would be some that are pretty much straight, a little bit longer, and that tends to be softer. On this Pure Flight, it kind of looks like a mixture of 2 of those. The shorter one being kind of the more curly, denser fibers, and then sticking up above that are straighter strands that are generally a little bit softer. So just looking at it visually, you can kind of see the lines where the 2 different types of turf interact. The longer turf strands almost make straight lines across it. To me, it really looks like a blend of the 2, and that's something that I've never really seen before in anything else. Now, one thing that's also different that I haven't seen before either is both versions of my hitting strip are marked with an arrow on the bottom. This one just has an arrow going this way. The plus version that I got, the arrow is the direction for the screen. To me, that means that there must be some kind of grain to this. If I had to guess, I would think the grain is going towards the screen. But visually, I can't really tell a difference. Now, this in my hand is the Pure Flight Plus. And the Pure Flight Plus is supposed to be basically identical to the original Pure Flight, but just more height or thickness. The base on the Pure Flight Plus is the same. And just visually looking at it, it looks like it is the same mixture of both of those different types of strands, but it looks to me like the straight strands that stick up above the curly ones are just maybe 1/4 inch longer. So I wanted to compare that to some different hitting strips and the different types of turf that you can see. The one that I think this most closely matches is going to be the Bullseye Soft Strike. It looks like almost exactly the same type of base. It's flexible. It does have what feels like the same density foam underneath. However, this has what I would call more dense, curly turf on top. So it feels more like a solid surface, where the Pure Flight has a less solid, kind of more mixed surface. This here is the Carl's Place foam insert. It's got much more going on underneath on that base, but I wanted to point out the putting turf on top. Sometimes you see a lot of hitting strips use just putting turf, much shorter, but still also that kind of curly fibers, but a very more solid surface on top than broken up with individual strands. And then here is another example. This is the Indoor Golf Shop SIG Preferred hitting strip. And again, a much thicker base, but the turf, as you can see, it's got that longer turf, but it's also curly, making a solid surface. Now with the Pure Flight, the longer, straighter strands most remind me of the Fiberbuilt Grass insert. And that one is really the only one I can think of that uses straight strands. There's no curl to them at all, really, at least in one of the versions that they released. So how is this going to fit within your simulator? You kind of need to know what the options are and all of that. It's pretty simple. You've got 2 size options. You've got 12 inch by 30 inch, which is generally like the standard size for hitting strips, which is a good thing that it conforms to that. And then you've got a 12 by 60 inch version. Now, You could put the entire 60-inch strip down in your floor or your mat if you wanted to. However, that does seem like a lot of wasted space. They do suggest on the website that you could cut it in half and just get two 12 by 30 inches for a little bit of a lower price if you wanted to do that. Now, an important part of fitting within the simulator is the height of the hitting strip, because you want your mat, your floor, or whatever you're going to be standing on to be flush with your hitting strip. The original is listed at 1.5 inches high. And then I did mention they have the plus version, which is listed at 1 3/4 inches high. However, I did find something really weird, and that is that the PureFlight Plus version really has an effective height of 1.5 inches. They're essentially the same. And I found that out because I dropped in the PureFlight Plus into my floor. And so my floor is made to be 1 3/4 inches tall, the same as the listed height of the PureFlight Plus. But when I dropped it in, I could see inside of the cutout all around it. And so I actually had to put in a 1/4 inch shim underneath it to raise it up to make it look flush. And later on, using the original PureFlight, I had to use the same 1/4 inch shim underneath that one, which I would expect because that's listed at 1.5 inches. So really strange. But what I think is going on here is that because you really have a mixture of two turfs here in this Plus version, and the only thing that is getting up to 1 3/4 inches are some of these straight strands that are not a solid surface. They are almost, I don't want to say patchy because it is even, but it does not cover the whole surface because it's got that other turf in between it all. And so really, when you put a golf ball on it, it has the same effective height as the other one. So interesting and definitely worth noting if you're thinking about going with the Plus version. It is cool that Big Moss does sell these 1/4 inch shims in 12 by 30 inches. You can see it is a foam, obviously flexible. It would be easy to cut if you needed to for some reason. And they sell these for $10. You could use anything you want, but if you're going to be needing to add a shim underneath your hitting strip or two, it's nice to just got an easy $10 option straight from Big Moss. All right, so let's talk about the feel or realism of both of these hitting strips. And to do this, I kind of want to just tell you how my experience went in order. I already mentioned, because of my flooring being 1 3/4 inches high, I started out with the PureFlight Plus. And on their website, it is listed that it is basically the same thing, and it says, if anything, it's a little bit easier on the joints. So I said, okay, it sounds like it'll be the same, I'll do that. So I started out with that PureFlight Plus, got it shimmed so that it would fit flush with my floor here, and hit some shots on it. And right away, my first reaction was that the ball feels teed up. It feels like it is sitting higher than the ground, and I believe it's because it is sitting on that straighter strand of turf, which sits up above the curly strands. It kind of effectively is teed up a little bit. So whenever I'm hitting a wedge or an iron and that club goes through it, it feels like I'm just kind of brushing the turf there on top. There's no compression of the golf ball or anything like that. It just feels like I'm picking it off that very thin top layer of turf. Now, if anything, what this reminded me the most of is that Fiberbuilt Grass insert, which also uses, although different, but straight up strands of turf. I think the stuff from Fiberbuilt is actually a little bit stiffer, but I got that feeling with the Fiberbuilt inserts as well. Just that teed up feeling. Club brushes through it, but doesn't really feel real. So you don't really feel much grass or turf whenever you hit the shot, but if you really do hit down on it, like with a wedge or something, that club easily goes down and you hit that foam base layer, which doesn't feel great. It kind of feels like very light on top and easy to get down to that base layer if you hit down on the ball. And that is actually something that I've felt, and I've heard other people comment about the Fiberbuilt Grass, is that if you hit down there, I think it's just like a metal or hard plastic or something base layer. So you could hit that and it does not feel good at all. However, I do think the Fiberbuilt Grass strands were actually longer, so had to go down further than here, but I don't quite remember completely. That was my feel. I was not impressed with the PureFlight Plus, at least the feeling of it at all. It was one of those that I put in, used for a little while, and then I was like, I want to take this out. I don't want to use this anymore. And so I was completely confused. I did not understand why so many people love this hitting strip, and I thought, well, I've really got to try the original. Maybe the original is very different than the Plus, and I owe it to anyone that's going to watch this to try both. So at that point, I ordered the original and waited for it to come in. Now, opening up the original, I found that, yeah, it is basically the same build, same mixture of turf as the other one, but it just looked like those longer strands were just not quite as long. So the two types of turf were just a little bit closer in height. And whenever I butt them up next to each other, I could tell what was going on with the PureFlight Plus is that really the effective height is the same. There's very little surface or very few strands that are actually up there reaching that 1 3/4 inch height. So kind of made sense what was going on there. And then I was able to drop it into my floor and with that same 1/4 inch shim and use both of them with that 1/4 inch shim. So how did the original feel? Right away, I could tell that I liked this better than the Plus. I could feel a little bit more turf interaction whenever I hit shots with my irons or wedges. It felt a little bit more like what I would expect and a little bit more like a normal golf hitting surface. Now, I definitely tried it out with chipping and putting. And with chipping, I actually liked it a lot. Felt great. And that's not really unusual, and it didn't surprise me because with a chip, that club head is moving so much slower. And so when you've got a really light turf, you can feel and interact with that turf more than whenever you're going through it with a full swing. Chipping did feel pretty nice, like you're on some soft grass. And when it came to putting, whenever you put the ball and just kind of roll it around on the turf, you could see that it doesn't roll naturally. It kind of excessively spins around as it's rolling and doesn't just act normal. And that is because of it rolling on those straight up strands instead of a more solid surface. So it kind of spins around a little bit more. And I saw the same thing with the Fiberbuilt Grass when I used to use that one. Now, does that affect the putting at all? Not from what I can tell. The Fiberbuilt Grass, I think, was even worse, and I putted directly on that. However, just rolling it around on the turf, it does seem like it's got to have some kind of effect, whether it's noticeable or not. Now let's go back to the full swing feels. Full swings with an iron on the original, I thought were much better. The ball did not feel as teed up. Depending on the swing, I could feel some nice, very light turf interaction, and it was not bad. But again, if I took a wedge or something and really tried to hit down on the ball, I could feel the club head going straight into that foam base. And again, that didn't feel great. Of course, it's better than hitting concrete, but it did not feel either real or like it was protecting me from injury either. I mean, it's a kind of a jarring feel up the lead arm. So again, I would kind of say that like the feel is extra light on the turf compared to some other things, and then firmer on the base layer. And so you get through the top turf layer pretty quickly and easily and into this firmer base layer if you're steep and hitting down on the ball like with a wedge or a short iron. So let me try to wrap up my thoughts on both of these strips. First of all, the size options are great. 12 inch by 30 inch is kind of the standard hitting strip size, so that's great. And the 1.5 inch height is also great. That makes it pretty flexible. If you need your floor to be higher, you can add shims to raise it to the level of your floor. And 1.5 inch is a decent mid-size height. When it comes specifically to the PureFlight Plus, I just have to say I personally did not like it. The effective height is the same 1.5 inches, and the turf feeling was very different to me in a bad way. Again, the ball felt very teed up, and it did not feel realistic to me at all. Now, is it easier on the joints? Probably so, as long as you're not too steep and going straight through that thin turf and into the base layer, because then that's going to be hard on the joints. I think you should know that it's more like 1.5 inches than 1 3/4. And I don't really feel like it's the best choice for injury prevention because you can really get through it and down into that base layer and get that jarring feeling. So what about the original, the regular PureFlight? I think it has a very similar feel. It's essentially the same thing, but there is less of that teed up feeling, which is a good thing to me, and you can feel a little bit more turf interaction. However, personally, it's not a feel that I like. What's amazing after testing so many different hitting strips is that they're all somewhat different, and everybody's golf swing is totally different. almost like a fingerprint. And so everyone's gonna like a different feel in the surface that they're hitting on. So I had to think about this and like, why are so many people liking this and who is this probably best for? And what I think is that it's probably best for people that take a shallow divot. If you brush the grass, kind of pull the grass blades out, but you don't really dig down and get dirt whenever you take a divot with a wedge or a short iron or something like that, maybe that is good, because that to me is when the PureFlight felt the best. Is kind of a shallow divot feel where I just kind of only got through the turf. Now, if you're on the course and you take divots where you can actually see dirt, remove the grass and get into the dirt some, I don't think you're gonna like this. I could be wrong, but I think you're gonna get through that turf and then just hit that base layer and it's gonna feel solid. I'm not a fan of that. And so just for context, some of the hitting strips that I personally have liked have been the SIG Pro Softy, the Carl's Place foam insert, and currently my favorite one that I'm using right now is the Carl's Place gel insert. Maybe that tells you a little bit more about what I like. Well, let's take the SIG Pro Softy for example. So it does have this longer turf on top, but it is curly, so it's pretty dense, okay? You can get into it and you can feel turf interaction with that. Underneath, you've got this really, really squishy foam, really soft, light density foam underneath. And what that allows is whenever I hit down into it, I feel the turf interaction, but if I'm going into it, it allows the insert to compress some instead of just hitting more of a dense foam. The Carl's Place foam insert works very similarly. It's just got a different turf on top. The gel insert is similar. It does have a putting turf on top. It's really heavy, but the gel allows it, whenever you hit down, to compress only in that area, as opposed to something with that foam. It kind of, the whole insert will compress, or at least the whole area where you're pushing down on that foam, but the gel really just compresses right on the club head, more like dirt, right? Because when you hit down in the dirt, the whole thing doesn't move, only where your club is going through it. So that's why, to me, this one feels really realistic and I'm really liking it right now. So guys, this was a hard one to make because I know so many of you out there like the PureFlight hitting strips. I don't know if you're talking about the original or if any of you have the Plus and you really like it, but I'm just hopefully doing my best to give you all the facts and show you what it is, compare it to some other things so you can see how it fits with other options. And I've got to tell you my personal feeling, and you can do what you want with that, but just keep in mind that everybody's swing is different and everyone is going to like something different in the feel category. So I hope this at least informs you and helps you make the best decision for you and what hitting strip you want to go with. If you want to find out about almost all of the hitting strips that I've reviewed, you can watch my hitting strip ranking video here. That'll give you a big overview of almost everything that I've reviewed. Or if you're looking for a specific one, you can check out my hitting strip playlist here and find any of the individual reviews I've done. That's it, guys. See you in the next one.